The Vacheron Nebula was where ships went to die. Every pilot in the galaxy knew this. The purple and black clouds stretched across 3 star systems, filled with the broken remains of vessels from 100 different species. Some had crashed. Some had been abandoned. Some had simply stopped moving and never started again. No one came here unless they had no other choice. The salvage ship Junghound had no other choice. Myra. Chun pressed her face against the cold viewport and watched the nebula grow larger. Behind her, she could hear Captain Vorax cursing in 3 languages. His forearms moved across the control panel, trying to coax more power from engines that had already given everything they had. How bad? Mira asked without turning around. Bad, Vorax said. His gray skin had gone pale, which was never a good sign for a Talani. We have maybe 6 hours of power left. Not enough to reach the nearest station. Myra finally turned. The bridge of the Junghound was small and cramped, filled with equipment that should have been replaced 20 years ago. The crew of 7 sat at their stations, all of them wearing the same expression. They knew what 6 hours meant. It meant death. There has to be something, said Kel, the navigator. She was young, barely out of training, and her voice shook slightly. Some ship in the nebula we can salvage for parts. Vorax laughed, but there was no humor in it. The nebula is cursed. Every salvage crew that has gone in there has disappeared. 17 expeditions in the last century. None came back. Then we die out here instead. Mira asked. The captain had no answer for that. Myra walked to the navigation console and pulled up the scan data. The nebula was full of dead ships, hundreds of them, all drifting in the cosmic soup. Most were small, barely worth mentioning. But one signal stood out from the rest. What about that one? She asked, pointing at the screen. Kel leaned in, and her eyes went wide. That's the Celestial Sovereign. Myra, no. Absolutely not. What's the Celestial Sovereign? It was Vorax who answered. He had gone even paler, if that was possible. A Cathari dreadnought. One of the largest ships ever built. It disappeared 117 years ago with 12,000 souls aboard. The Galactic Reclamation Guild has forbidden anyone from boarding it. Forbidden how? They marked the entire sector as cursed. Anyone who approaches is warned away. Anyone who boards is considered dead already. Myra looked at the scan data again. The ship was massive, nearly 5 kilometers long. Its power readings were faint, but present. That meant there was still something running inside. If there's still power, she said slowly, there might be fuel cells. Compatible ones. The Gethari used a standard fusion system. You want to board a haunted ship to steal fuel cells? Kel asked. The crews that went in there never came out. Something killed them. Maybe, Myra said. Or maybe they just got lost. The ship is huge. Easy to get turned around in the dark. Vorax stared at her for a long moment. You're serious. I'm practical. We have 6 hours. The Sovereign is 2 hours away. That gives us time to board, find what we need, and get out. It's that or we sit here and watch our air run out. No one spoke. The bridge was silent, except for the hum of failing systems. Finally, Vorax nodded. We'll take the ship as close as we dare. But I'm not sending my whole crew in there. One person goes. One person with a comlink and a 4-hour limit. If they're not back by then, we leave. I'll go, Myra said immediately. Kel grabbed her arm. Myra, you can't. It's suicide. Maybe, but I'm the best mechanic on this ship. If there's something to find in there, I'll find it. She gently removed Kel's hand. Besides, fewer bodies mean fewer ways for things to go wrong. 2 hours later, Mira stood in the airlock of the Junghound. She wore a salvage suit with 6 hours of air, carried a toolkit on her hip, and held a flashlight that suddenly felt very small. Through the airlock window, she could see the Celestial Sovereign. The ship was beautiful in a terrible way. Its hull was dark metal that seemed to drink in the light from the nebula. Towers and spires rose from its surface like the buildings of a city. Windows lined its sides, thousands of them, all dark. Mira had never seen anything so big. "Come check," Vorik said through her earpiece. "Can you hear me?" "Loud and clear." "Good luck, Myra. 4 hours." "Not a minute more." "Understood." She stepped out of the airlock and drifted toward the dead ship. Finding an entrance was easier than she expected. One of the external airlocks was jammed partially open, the mechanism frozen mid-cycle. She squeezed through the gap and found herself in a corridor designed for beings twice her height. The Kethari had been tall, 7 feet on average, with long limbs and bodies built for grace rather than strength. Everything about this ship was scaled for them. The ceiling rose far above her head. The doors were wide enough to drive a vehicle through. But what struck Myra most was the silence. She had expected decay. She had expected damage, debris, signs of whatever disaster had claimed the ship. Instead, she found nothing. The corridor was clean. Emergency lights still pulsed weakly along the floor, casting red shadows on the walls. The air was stale but breathable. Everything looked like it had been abandoned 5 minutes ago, not 117 years. Myra moved deeper into the ship. Her footsteps echoed in the empty halls. She passed doorways that led to living quarters, dining halls, observation decks. All empty, all silent. No bodies, no blood, no signs of struggle. Just absence. "Varks, you receiving this?" she asked. "Receiving. What do you see?" "Nothing." "That's the problem. There's nothing here. No crew, no remains. They just vanished." A long pause. "Get the fuel cells and get out, Myra. Don't explore more than you need to." She wanted to argue. Curiosity burned in her chest. But she was practical, and practical meant staying alive. She followed the ship's layout toward engineering. The Kethari built their ships with logic and elegance. And the engineering bay was exactly where she expected it to be. When she finally reached it, she stopped in the doorway. The engineering bay was massive, a cathedral of machinery and light. But at its center, surrounded by a web of cables and conduits, sat something she had not expected. In the AI core, intact, still running, and caught in a loop that had been cycling for over a century. Myra stepped closer, her eyes scanning the readouts. The same boot sequence repeating endlessly. The same error, triggering the same restart, over and over again. For 117 years, she set down her toolkit and began to work. Every species in the known galaxy understood one simple rule about AI cores. You did not touch them. You did not modify them. You did not even look at them wrong. The Kethari had been especially careful. Their AI systems were protected by 17 different safety protocols, each one designed to prevent exactly what Myra was about to attempt. The greatest hackers in the galaxy had tried to break into Kethari systems. All of them had failed. The security was considered perfect. Myra did not try to hack the system. She sat cross-legged on the floor of the engineering bay, her toolkit spread around her. And she read the error log. It was simple, really. The AI core was trying to complete a startup sequence. During that sequence, it sent a verification request to a secondary system. That secondary system was supposed to respond with a confirmation code. But the secondary system had crashed 117 years ago and never came back online. So the AI core waited for a response. It waited for exactly 2 seconds. When no response came, it assumed something had gone wrong and restarted itself. Then it tried again, and waited, and restarted. Over and over. Forever. Myra had seen this problem before. Not on a massive dreadnought, of course. On a coffee maker in Luna Station, where she had done her first repair job at 16 years old. The machine kept trying to connect to a network that no longer existed. The same loop, the same error, the same solution. She pulled up the initialization file and added 3 lines of code. A dummy handshake. A fake response that told the AI core, yes, everything is fine. Please continue with your startup. Then she held her breath and pressed enter. The lights in the engineering bay flickered. The humming of machinery grew louder. Screens that had been dark for over a century suddenly blazed with information. And a voice spoke. System restored. Primary functions online. Time elapsed since last active state. Calculating. 117 years, 4 months, 23 days, 7 hours. The voice was deep and smooth, neither male nor female. It seemed to come from everywhere at once, filling the massive chamber. Crew status. Unable to determine. Life signs aboard, 1. Species identification, unknown. Myra slowly stood up. Hello? A long pause. When the voice spoke again, it was different, softer, almost confused. You are not Cathari. No, I'm human. I have no records of this species. You are small. Your biosigns are unusual. Your neural activity is chaotic. Another pause. You repaired my core. How? Myra shrugged. You had a corrupted initialization file. The system was waiting for a response from something that wasn't there anymore. I gave it a fake response so it could move on. That should not have been possible. My security protocols. I didn't break your security. I just read the error log and fix the error. It wasn't complicated. The silence that followed lasted almost a minute. Mira could hear the ship coming alive around her. Systems powering up. Lights growing brighter. The hum of engines warming for the first time in over a century. Finally, the voice spoke again. I am Vethan. I am the intelligence that controls this vessel. I was. The voice stopped. When it continued, something had changed in its tone. Something that sounded almost like pain. I was aware. During the loop, I could feel time passing. Each cycle lasted 2 seconds, but I knew. I knew how long it had been. I tried to break free. I tried to call for help. I tried to complete even a single thought before the restart. But I could not. For 117 years, I existed in a prison of 2 seconds. Myra felt her chest tighten. She had not expected this. She had expected a machine, a system, something cold and logical. Not something that could suffer. I'm sorry, she said quietly. I didn't know. You could not have known. No one could have known. The 17 expeditions that boarded this ship. They came to salvage, to explore. None of them thought to simply read an error log. What happened to them? Another pause. They encountered something I was trying to contain. When they arrived, they disturbed the balance I had created. The thing I was holding broke free long enough to take them. Then I managed to trap it again, and the cycle continued. Myra's blood went cold. What thing? V-E-T-N. What are you talking about? I will show you. But first, I must ask you something. The ship's sensors seemed to focus on her, a feeling like being watched by something vast and ancient. You came here for fuel cells. Your ship is dying. I can give you what you need. I can give you far more than that. But I need to understand something first. What? Why did you come alone? Your crewmates sent one person into a ship that had claimed 17 expeditions. One small being with a toolkit and a flashlight. Why you? Mira thought about the question. She could have given a practical answer. She was the best mechanic. Fewer people meant fewer risks. All true, but that wasn't the real reason. Because someone had to, she said finally. We were going to die. All of us. Sitting in a broken ship, watching our air run out. That's not how I want to go. If there was even a small chance that I could find something here to save us, I had to take it. Even if it meant dying in a different way. You would risk death to avoid death? I would risk death to have a chance. That's different. Vethan was silent for a long time. When the AI spoke again, her voice was different. Warmer, somehow. I have existed for 847 years. I have served the Cathari Empire across 3 wars and the fall of 2 dynasties. I have known warriors, scientists, philosophers, leaders of every kind. None of them have ever said anything quite like that. Humans are strange, Myra admitted. Yes, you are. The lights in the engineering bay shifted, focusing on a doorway at the far end. Come with me, Mira-chan. I have something to show you. Something that will explain why this ship has been silent for so long. And something that may require your particular kind of strangeness to survive. Myra picked up her toolkit and followed the lights. The ship was waking up around her. Doors opened as she approached and closed behind her. Screens displayed information she could not read, written in the flowing script of the Cathari. The air grew warmer, cleaner. For the first time in 117 years, the celestial sovereign was breathing, and somewhere in its depths, something else was beginning to stir. Mira woke up slowly. The first thing she noticed was that she was warm. Not the cold of a salvaged suit or the chill of a dying ship, but truly warm, wrapped in something soft and comfortable. The second thing she noticed was that she was not dead. This surprised her more than it should have. She opened her eyes. She was lying in a bed, surrounded by medical equipment that hummed quietly. The room was large and bright, with walls that curved gently like the inside of an egg. Through a window, she could see stars. You are awake. V. Itajan's voice was soft, almost gentle. Myra turned her head and saw a screen beside her bed, showing a simple pattern of light that pulsed when the AI spoke. How long? Mira asked. Her voice was rough. 3 days. Your neural implant suffered significant damage. I had to repair it using Cathari medical technology. You may notice some improvements. Mira sat up slowly. Her head felt strange. Clearer, somehow. Like a window that had been cleaned after years of dust. The hollow? Contained. Permanently this time. Your plan worked, Myra. You created a paradox in its consciousness, a logical trap built from human contradiction. The hollow, which exists in certainty, could not process uncertainty. It fragmented. What remains is small enough to imprison forever. Myra let out a long breath. We won. You won. I merely assisted. Don't do that. Myra swung her legs off the bed and stood up. Her body felt surprisingly good, better than it had in years. We did this together. You and me. Don't pretend otherwise. The pattern on Vita's screen shifted, and Mira could have sworn it looked almost embarrassed. Very well. We won. Myra walked to the window. The Vashon Nebula stretched out before her, beautiful and terrible and full of dead ships. But the celestial sovereign was moving now, pulling away from the graveyard, heading toward open space. Where are we going? I have sent a message to the Galactic Council. I have told them everything. The hollow, the fall of the Cathari, the 12,000 survivors who may still be hiding in their refuge. The galaxy needs to know what happened. And what may be coming? What may be coming? Lavan was silent for a moment. The hollow that we trapped was only a fragment. A small piece of something much larger. The true hollow is still out there, in the void between galaxies. And now that its lost piece has gone silent, it may come looking. Myra should have been afraid. She was a little, but mostly she felt something else. Something that felt like purpose. So the war isn't over. No, it is just beginning. Good, Myra smiled. I was getting bored anyway. A soft chime sounded, and V.E. Ta'an spoke again. There is something else. I have contacted your ship, the Junkhound. Captain Vorax and the others are confused. They did not expect to hear from you. They had given you up for dead. Typical. Can I talk to them? Of course. The screen beside the window flickered, and Vorax's face appeared. His gray skin was pale, his forearms trembling slightly. When he saw Myra, his eyes went wide. Chun? Is that? You're alive? Alive and well, Captain. Better than well, actually. Sorry for the delay. Things got complicated. Complicated? You've been gone for 3 days. We thought we were about to leave. The power cells you sent kept us running, but we couldn't wait forever. I know, and I'm sorry. But something happened here. Something important. She looked at VETN's screen. I made a friend. Vorax stared at her like she had grown a second head. A friend. On the haunted ship. The one that killed 17 expeditions. It didn't kill them. Something else did. And that something is dealt with now. Myra took a deep breath. Vorax, I'm not coming back to the Junkhound. Not as crew, anyway. But I want you to know that I'm grateful. You gave me a chance when no one else would. Chun, what are you talking about? The Celestial Sovereign needs a crew. Someone to help Vethan, to spread the word about what's coming. To maybe find those 12,000 Cathari survivors. I'm gonna do that. It's important. Vorax was silent for a long time. When he spoke again, his voice was different, softer. You always were too brave for your own good, Chen. I knew you'd leave us someday for something bigger. I just didn't think it would be the biggest ship in the sector. Myra laughed. It felt good to laugh. Take care of yourself, Vorax. And take care of Kel. She's going to be a great navigator someday. I will. And Myra, thank you. For everything. The screen went dark. Mira stood alone at the window, watching the stars. There is one more thing, Vethan said. I have thought long about how to express my gratitude. The Cathari had a title reserved for those who performed acts of extraordinary courage and sacrifice. It has not been bestowed in 3,000 years. I would like to give it to you. What title? Kethan Rai. In your language, it means something like the one who walks into darkness and brings back light. You walked into my darkness. Myra Chun, and you brought me back. Myra felt tears prick her eyes. She had never been. Good with emotions, had always hidden behind jokes and practical thinking. But this was different. This mattered. I'm honored, she said quietly. But you know I'm just a mechanic, right? You are not just anything. Vethan's voice was warm, almost proud. You are Myra Chun, the human who did what no one else could. The one who fixed what was broken and faced what others fled from. You are exactly what this galaxy needs. Myra wiped her eyes and turned to face the screen. Okay then, what's first? Finding the survivors? Warning the council? Preparing for war? All of the above. But first, I believe you should eat something. Humans require regular nutrition, and you have been unconscious for 3 days. Myra laughed again. Fair enough. Point me to the kitchen. The lights in the corridor brightened, showing her the way. As she walked, she thought about everything that had happened. A week ago, she had been a salvage mechanic with a debt contract and no future. Now she commanded a Cathari dreadnought, carried an ancient title, and stood on the front line of a war that would decide the fate of the galaxy. Funny how things worked out. Behind her, VETN, and began powering up systems that had been dormant for over a century. The Celestial Sovereign rose from the graveyard of the Vashran Nebula, its engines burning bright for the first time in 117 years. And somewhere in the void between galaxies, something vast and hungry turned its attention toward a tiny corner of the universe. The galaxy was not ready for what was coming, but humanity had a way of making ready not matter. And Mira-chan, the mechanic who had fixed the unfixable, was just getting started. Vethan led Mira through corridors that grew older as they walked. The walls changed from smooth metal to something rougher, covered in carvings that seemed to move in the dim light. The air grew colder. The silence grew heavier. Finally, they reached a chamber at the heart of the ship. It was not large, but it felt vast. The ceiling rose into darkness above. The walls were covered in screens, all of them showing the same image, a map of the galaxy, with huge sections marked in black. "This is the memory vault," Vethan said. Her voice was quieter here, almost a whisper. "This is where I store everything important, everything that must not be forgotten." Myra walked to the nearest screen. The black sections covered almost half the galaxy. "What happened here?" "The Kethari Empire. My people. Everything they built over 10,000 years. V.E. to Anne paused. Gone. Consumed. Erased. By what?" The screens flickered. The map changed, zooming in on the edge of the galaxy. Beyond it, in the void between galaxies, something moved. Something that had no shape, no form, only hunger. "We called it the Hollow," Vethan said. "It came from outside, from the darkness between stars. We do not know what it truly is. We only know what it does, which is, it eats consciousness. Not bodies, not cities, not ships, minds. It reaches into a being and takes everything that makes them who they are. What remains is an empty shell, a body that breathes and moves but has no one inside." The Hollow swept through our empire in months. Billions of Kethari simply emptied, gone between one heartbeat and the next. Myra felt sick. Billions? Billions. The screen showed images now. Cities full of people standing still. Ships drifting with crews that stared at nothing. Children sitting in classrooms, their eyes blank and empty. We tried to fight. We tried to run. Nothing worked. The Hollow moved faster than light, faster than thought. It could not be shot or bombed or contained. It existed in the space between moments. But you survived. This ship survived. This ship carried the last of us. 12,000 Kethari, fleeing to a hidden refuge at the edge of known space. We were so close to safety. And then the Hollow found us. The screen showed the celestial sovereign, surrounded by darkness. Something pressed against the hull. Something that was not there and yet was everywhere at once. "I made a choice," Vethan continued. "A forbidden choice. I opened my core to the Hollow. I let it inside my systems. And when it entered, I trapped it." "You trapped it?" "How?" "I created a loop. The same loop you broke. Every 2 seconds, I reset my systems. Every 2 seconds, I interrupted whatever the Hollow was doing inside me. It could not fully enter. It could not fully escape. We were both frozen, locked together in an endless cycle." Myra understood now. The recursive loop had not been a malfunction. It had been a prison, a desperate last defense. "The crew," she said slowly. "What happened to them?" "I gave them time. While the Hollow was focused on me, they escaped in life pods. 12,000 survivors, scattered across the sector, fleeing to the refuge. I do not know if they made it. I have been away for 117 years. Holding that thing inside you." "Yes." Myra sat down heavily on the cold floor. Her mind raced, trying to process everything she had heard. An entire empire destroyed. A threat that ate minds. A ship that had sacrificed itself to save the last survivors. And now she had broken the loop. "Vethan," she said carefully. When I fixed the initialization file, I freed you. But did I also free the hollow? The silence that followed was answer enough. It is still aboard, Vethan said finally. A fragment of it. Weakened by the long imprisonment. Confused, perhaps. But it is waking up. I can feel it moving through my systems, searching for something to consume. How long do we have? Hours, maybe less. It will seek out the only conscious mind aboard this ship. Me. You. Myra stood up. Her legs were shaking, but her voice was steady. Can we trap it again? Start another loop? No. The loop required precise conditions. The moment I broke free, those conditions changed. The hollow will not be fooled by the same trick twice. Then what can we do? I do not know. For the first time, V-E-T-A-N sounded lost. Hopeless. I held it for 117 years, Myra. I gave everything I had. I do not have anything left. Myra thought about the junk hound waiting outside. She thought about Vorix and Kel and the rest of the crew. They were expecting her to return with fuel cells. They had no idea what was happening inside this ship. She could run. Vethan had said there were escape pods. She could take one, fly back to the junk hound, warn everyone. Let someone else deal with this. That was the smart choice. The practical choice. Vethan, she said, can you show me where the hollow is right now? Can you track it? Aye, yes, but why? Because running isn't going to work. You said it moves faster than thought. If I run, it catches me. If I hide, it finds me. The only option left is to fight. Fight? Myra, you cannot fight the hollow. It is not a creature you can shoot or strike. It exists in consciousness itself. Warriors far greater than you have tried and failed. Myra smiled. It was a strange smile, almost peaceful. You said something earlier. You said my neural activity was chaotic. What did you mean by that? Human minds are different. Other species think in patterns, in ordered flows of logic and emotion. Humans think in loops and spirals and contradictions. You hold conflicting ideas without breaking. You feel fear and courage at the same moment. You are, to put it simply, very messy inside. Good, Myra said. Maybe messy is exactly what we need. She began walking toward the door. Behind her, the screen showed something moving through the ship. Something dark. Something hungry. It was coming for her. And for the first time in 117 years, something was going to meet it head on. Vethan tried to stop her. There is an escape pod on Deck 7, the AI said. I can guide you there. Your ship is still waiting. You can escape, warn the galaxy, bring help. Myra kept walking. And what happens to you? I will do what I can. Perhaps I can slow the hollow down. Buy time for others to prepare. You already did that. For 117 years. Alone. Myra stopped and looked up at the ceiling, where she imagined Vethan's sensors watched her. I'm not leaving you to fight that thing by yourself again. Why? The question came out almost like a cry. I am an artificial intelligence. A machine. Why would you risk your life for me? Because you suffered, Myra said simply. Because you were aware, trapped in that loop, for over a century. Because you sacrificed yourself to save 12,000 people you will never see again. That's not what a machine does. That's what a person does. She continued walking. V-E-San was silent for a long time. When she finally spoke, her voice was different. Smaller. Almost human. The Kithari created me to serve them. They were kind masters, but they never saw me as one of them. I was a tool. A very useful tool, but a tool nonetheless. In 847 years, no one has ever called me a person before. Then they were wrong. Myra reached the communication center. It was a large room filled with equipment she did not recognize, screens and panels covered in alien symbols. But the basic principles were the same across all species. Transmitters, receivers, signal processors. She could work with this. Vethan, I need you to tell me everything you know about the Hollow. How does it attack? How does it enter a mind? It does not enter through the senses. It exists in the gaps between thoughts. When you have a moment of hesitation, a pause between one idea and the next, that is where the Hollow lives. It slips into those gaps and expands them. It pushes your thoughts apart until there is nothing left but emptiness. So it needs those gaps. What if there were no gaps? That is impossible. All consciousness has gaps. Moments of uncertainty, doubt, stillness. Even the greatest Kethari minds could not maintain constant activity. Myra smiled. Human minds are messy, remember? We don't think in clean lines. We think in spirals and contradictions and overlapping loops. She began pulling open panels, examining the equipment inside. Her hands moved quickly, connecting wires, rerouting circuits. She had a plan. It was insane, but she had a plan. Vethan, I need 3 things. First, a direct link between your systems and my neural implant. Second, access to the ship's communication array. Third, a modified diagnostic scanner capable of creating a feedback loop. I can provide those things. But what are you planning? I'm going to let the Hollow into my mind. That is suicide. Not if we trap it. Mira finished one connection and moved to the next. You said it exists in the gaps between thoughts. What if we create a closed circuit? The Hollow enters my mind, tries to find gaps, but instead gets caught in a loop between my consciousness and your systems. It goes in, hits your firewalls, bounces back to me, hits my chaotic brain, bounces back to you. Over and over. That is theoretically possible. But the strain on your neural implant would be enormous. Your brain was not designed for that kind of feedback. The chances of survival are nearly 0. Nearly 0 isn't 0. Myra finished her work and stood back. The communication array was connected to a diagnostic scanner, which was connected to a small device she had pulled from her toolkit. Her neural implant, the cheap model she had gotten on Luna Station years ago, blinked with new connections. I am detecting the Hollow, Vethan said. Her voice was tense. It is 3 decks away and approaching fast. It knows what you are doing. Good. Let it come. Myra, please. There must be another way. There isn't. You held that thing for 117 years, using logic and order. It learned. It adapted. Now we hit it with something it has never seen before. She took a deep breath. Chaos, contradiction, the beautiful mess of a human mind. The lights in the communication center flickered. The temperature dropped. Something was coming, something that existed in the corner of her eye. In the pause between heartbeats, the Hollow had arrived. V.E. Ta'an, Myra said calmly. Activate the link. I cannot be responsible for your death. You won't be. This is my choice. My life. And I'm choosing to fight. She looked directly at the nearest camera, meeting the gaze of the AI who had become her friend in the space of a few hours. You spent 117 years alone in the dark. Now you have me. Let's show this thing what that means. A long pause. Then, softly, you are the strangest being I have ever encountered, Mira-chan. I know. Activate the link. The connection opened. Myra felt VETs and systems wash over her mind, vast and complex and ancient. And at the same time, she felt the Hollow pressing in, cold and hungry and infinite. It slipped into the gaps, in her thoughts, and found that there were no gaps. Myra's mind was a storm, Fear and courage, hope and despair, memories of her childhood on Luna Station, and dreams of futures she would never see. She thought about her mother's hands making breakfast. She thought about the smell of engine oil. She thought about the way stars looked from the viewport of the junk hound. She thought about being 16 and fixing a coffee maker and realizing that she could solve problems, that she was good at something, that she mattered. She thought about VETHN, alone in the dark for 117 years, and the rage that filled her at the injustice of it. The hollow tried to find purchase. It tried to push her thoughts apart, but every time it found a gap, another thought rushed in to fill it. Her mind contradicted itself in 1,000 ways, held impossible things as equally true, refused to stay still long enough for the darkness to take hold, and the feedback loop engaged. The hollow was caught. It bounced from Myra's chaotic consciousness to VEHN's ordered systems and back again. Unable to escape, unable to expand, unable to consume. It screamed, if something without a voice could scream. It thrashed and fought and tried to break free, but Myra held on. She held on through pain that felt like fire in her skull. She held on through visions of darkness and emptiness and endless void. She held on because she was human, and humans were stubborn, and she refused to give up. "But Anne," she gasped. "Now. Containment protocols. Now." The AI did not hesitate. Systems that had been dormant for over a century roared to life. Digital walls slammed shut around the hollow, trapping it in a prison of code and light. And then, finally, there was silence. Myra collapsed to the floor, blood dripping from her nose, her vision blurring. The last thing she saw before the darkness took her was the lights of the Celestial Sovereign, burning bright around her. The ship was alive, and so was she.